Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Fury from 2014. So, I'm going to go on and feel that this movie is great, but then also it's sad as F. Logically, of course, I would go on and say that this movie is a tank film, and we have a number of characters who have gone on within the time period of 1945 to have fought a number of battles against Germans through Africa to then Germany. And they eventually go on and meet up with a guy named Norman, who, of course, is to be new to the group and is to be this clerk who had only got on to just have a concern of needing to type 60 words per minute and is to just kind of be really just gun shy about murdering and killing people, even though that is to actually be currently his job. So eventually they have to force him into killing, which then has him start to kill people. Then eventually has to have him eventually go on and state that this is the best job he's ever had. So we have a film that I've seen more than once, and there were certain parts of it that I did remember. There were certain flashes here and there I did remember, but a lot of it I'm like, ah. So I did not remember how sad this movie was, but I just remembered just certain things about it. So when going into this, if you were to be first time ever watching this, yeah, maybe you may want to go on and know how really very much the domino of misery goes into this film, to where you're going to consistently just start to see people die within this film and just be sad, and then just be uh, just upset of me for going on and talking about this movie. But hey, I've told you right out of the gate. I've given you all the warnings. I'm giving you all the red flags now. So with this movie, I'm to go on and say that I feel that it's very hard for me to really go on and actually talk about this film, just because I feel that I have to really hide my emotions, because logically, if I want to go on and actually say how I really feel and whatever, I'd be like, I don't want to do that. So logically, yeah, how much more can I go on and just say sad, boohoo, cry, whatever thing within this review? Really want to even going on and comparing it to a bunch of just other military films like The Lone Survivor and Saving Private Ryan and uh, Tears of the Sun, and a number of just kind of specifically military movies that are probably fairly sad. But then also, to probably want to compare this movie to stuff like Schindler's List and The Pianist, that of course are to also just be only compared to because they are sad films, but not are to be the exact same. But anyways, let me know in the comments below if this is to either be your favorite film or is to go on and just be a film that you really like for whatever reason, because that would be strange. Um, but maybe like you were to go on and find this movie uplifting, or maybe you were to have been in the military service and just like a film like this for whatever reason. Let me know in the comments below. Um, but anyways, uh, I think it's about that time to just go on and say that there's a weird part of this movie in me, that is to say that there is some kind of like beauty in the horror of it all. There is some weird parts of me that is to kind of look at this movie um, and just be like, like there's something to get from this beyond just the carnage and the whatever. It's kind of like looking at Schindler's List and seeing the one red coat in a sea of black and white, and just being like, huh, there's some kind of art there, bizarrely, in the sadness. Um, but anyways, when going on into this movie, I hope people can also remember, regardless of how much I'm to say about the boohoo, that there's a good story here. There is a great thing coming out of here, um, which is a story that may have not ever gotten told, and that could be the real pull away here. Um, but anyways, let's go on and say, excuse me, that this movie is available on Tubi, TUBI, if you dare want to go on and check it out for whatever reason, or again, maybe you've seen it a plethora of times or whatever. Maybe you're just a person that just likes a good cry. I don't know. However you were to go on and choose your films, like no judging, but hey, whatever. Um, again, maybe this is to be your favorite movie and it doesn't make you cry. Whatever. Anyways, uh, this movie can also be seen on apps if you are to dare in fact be a mobile user. A app called Zelifonic, Zelibonic, or also Moopsy, Moopzzi. I never get money for going on and recommending these apps, but dare in fact, if you want to go on and watch this movie, as well as a plethora of others for absolutely free, then by golly, you can go on and get into these apps and watch a bunch of stuff that you probably wouldn't be able to watch unless you had a certain specific app that had a certain specific subscription, blah, 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 all that nonsense. But anything, I think I'm going to go on and push on as much as possible to just get into spoilers about this movie. So, there may be at certain points, because there is a lot of battles, a lot of wars, a lot of things going on in this film, that at some point I may get things confused. But I'm going to try and clear anything up as much as I can, as humanly possible, and also try to give you the best spoiler review that I can go on and do for you for Fury. So, by golly, comment whatever you want in the comment section below, because it helps the review, it helps out the video, and it also helps me because I can just go on and say, like, good people said things in the comment section, because eventually a lot of these comments, a lot of these sections, a lot of these videos are just to go on and be just cold out there, and just tumbleweeding, and just nobody's needing to just say words in the comment section for whatever reason. You were just to go on and just view this for 20 to 30 seconds, I'm sure, of your time, and then click off, and then just, or maybe you're here for a little bit longer, because eventually maybe it just takes a little bit longer for you to just be disinterested in a video of mine that I've gone on and talked words and said things about. But without a doubt, I thank you for going on and doing so. I do appreciate it. As well as also getting my cough on. So, let's go on and go into full breakdown of this movie. It's about that time again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil this movie. So, let me get out my cast list, and whatever I am to insist is going to help me be able to knock this movie down. So, with that said, luckily I was able to just get right into where I was to get to just talk about this film. So, unless it kicks me out, let's see how long this lasts. So, spoilers, everybody! Spoilers! For those of you that want to avoid any of the spoiler things, or probably you've seen this movie a billion times anyways, and you don't cry anymore because you just don't feel like a human being. I don't have tear ducts, sir. I don't do the boohooery. I know this movie inside and out. I don't do the boohoo. No, sir. No, siree. Anyways, so the very first beginning of this film is to have a man who is a German soldier who is making his way through a battlefield while riding a horse, and the clippity clop of things is to lead to a man who I'm going to call War Daddy, who is Brad Pitt's character, is to jump upon this German soldier, cut him, kill him, and then free his horse and let him just ride off in the sunset, this horse. So, I'm going to go on and give most of the characters these nicknames that they're to be given throughout this film. But I'm going to mostly call Norman in this movie. And then also, I will probably not call Grady what his nickname is, John Berthal's character, because his nickname is fairly offensive, so I'm not going to call him that. So, but War Daddy makes his way into the tank, and so we start to go on and have the busting of chops going on in here as War Daddy turns to Grady, and it seems that he's having problems with the mechanics in the tank, and so he goes on and he kicks him, and we have Grady who turns to War Daddy. He's like, "Well, hey, why are you always whooping me?" And Daddy turns to Grady and tells him, like, "Well, hey, it's because you're a animal, you're a dog, and the only thing that you understand is a fist or a good boot." So we have Grady that turns to Daddy and tells him, like, "Well, hey, like, I'm not an animal, I'm not a dog." It's like, "Oh, whatever." So we go on to have Gordo who's starting to speak Spanish, and we then have Daddy who turns to Gordo. It's like, "Well, hey, like, you can go on, you can speak Mexican in a Mexican tank, but this is an American tank, so you're going to talk American here." And it's very offensive. So we have Gordo that turns to Daddy. It's like, "Well, hey, you speak German." And Daddy's like, "Well, yeah, but that's different because that's a tool of war. And, like, I need to speak German. It's different." So come to find out, within this tank, there's to be a dead man in this tank. And so I believe that this dead man is named Red, weirdly enough. So eventually they go on and they go to a base, and this body is to be taken out of the tank and being supposedly buried somewhere. So Daddy pokes his head out of the tank to come to find that there is a foreign object that is flying their way. So Daddy gets back into the tank and tells him that rain is coming, and that they need to start moving out and they need to get the heck out of there. As we have Daddy that turns to Grady and calls him sweetheart. So they make their way, the Fury tank, to a base of operations where they're to see a bunch of German refugees. So they make their way through this base to find that there is a bunch of people who are injured or probably worse that are getting medical attention. And so we then have Daddy who meets up with Lieutenant Parker. And Lieutenant Parker ends up asking Daddy, like, "Well, hey, where's the rest of the third platoon?" And Daddy turns to Parker. It's like, "Well, we're it. Like, that's all that's left." So as they go on and haul out the body of their dead brethren, we have Daddy that turns to the guys like, "Well, hey, uh, like, I know everybody's sad about Red's passing, but we got another job to do." So we have Daddy that takes his time away from the tank, and he is just like trying to like compress or something. He's just doing this weird goofy thing with his hands next to his just fist or hands next to his head, and he's just kind of pressing his head. He's just trying to like just figure out a way to just get all the horrors just out of his brain, I guess. And just try to just build the will to continue to keep going and getting back into what's all going on here. So we then come to find that Daddy is to meet up with Norman, who has only been in the military of the army for 8 weeks. So we have Daddy that goes on and tells Norman where to go and tells him that the tank is home. So Norman makes his way to meet up with the rest of the crew of his, and they already start opening up his stuff and looking through it and finding a book. And so they end up asking him if he went to tank school, which of course he ends up saying no. He ends up saying that he is a clerk typist and he was to just be uh, pulled off the truck and he was sent here, and he thinks that it's a mistake. And Grady ends up saying, like, well, hey, this is military. They don't make mistakes. So we then have Bible with Shia LaBeouf's character was going on and asking Norman if he is to have found religion, and so they go in depth about what religion he is to be involved in, and then they end up saying like, well, hey, like, are you ready? Like, are you ready to see what a man can do to another man? So Grady ends up telling Norman, it's like, well, hey, before you find Jesus, why don't you find a bucket of hot water because you're gonna have to go on and clean your seat because there's gonna be a bunch of blood on it and there's gonna be chunks of a man left there. So Norman is going on and cleaning the tank of blood and a piece of face. So not a not a piece pizza face, piece of face. So Daddy meets up with some of the sergeants, and so they're talking about how they send 5 tanks out, and one comes back. It hardly seems like they're winning the war. And as Norman's puking off to the side after he gets out of the tank, the all Daddy and some of the sergeants notice that the American soldiers are pulling one of the German ones out to try and interrogate them. And Daddy's like, "Oh, I'll go in and I'll interrogate him. I'll tell him what his favorite color is, or if he's a good dancer, if he likes fat chicks." And so Daddy starts to just beat on this guy, and so eventually they pull him apart. And so Daddy then turns to Norman and is to tell him, it's like, "Hey, you kill every last one of those guys. They're real a-holes." And Daddy then turns to Norman. It's like, well, hey, have you done much killing? And we have Norman who's like, no. So Daddy tells Gordo to teach him how to use the guns. So at least he'll know how to do that. So we then have Lieutenant Parker who's going on and telling them their mission about their punching east and this and that. So eventually, when Parker is giving them these instructions and stating that War Daddy will be their platoon sergeant and drawing them a map and this and that, Eventually, one of the sergeants, Ben Kowski, whose name will continue to probably escape me through this entire review, I will probably go on and just call him Sergeant because his name is harder to remember. So, but Benkowski ends up turning to Parker and it's asking him, like, hey, have you started shaving your face? As everyone starts to laugh and starts to walk off here. So, really saying that they're kind of annoyed that this guy is giving him orders and they're not, and he's not really old enough to be giving them orders. So, they all start to deploy or start to leave here, these tanks, one by one. And we have at one point where someone is going on and shouting to War Daddy how he goes on and is to owe him $40. And so as they leave, there comes to find a sign that says, "You are in Germany, a enemy country. Keep on the alert, courtesy of the Second Armored Division." So as the tanks make their way through this field, they start to see a number of civilians, and we have War Daddy that is to go on and alert people. It's like, well, hey, like, all right, there might be some wolves hiding in sheep's. So, uh, if anything makes a move, then cut them in half. So, they go on to continue to find all these civilians. At some point, uh, War Daddy is to go on and tell them, like, well, hey, just keep your hands up and just keep moving. So, there ends up being this one girl on this trail who has this bike, and she is to just kind of see the passing of these tanks, and Norman is to turn and look at her, and vice versa. So we have Gordo that turns to Norman as to say, it's like, well, hey, I bet she'll F you for a chocolate bar. And here's where they go into this long rant of joking, where we have at one point where bizarrely they end up keep asking one of the, like, well, hey, uh well, hey, does Jesus love Adolf and this and that, and like uh and then it sucks that they can kill Germans but they can't F them. And so they go on and they ask, like, would Adolf uh F one of them if it means that he can get a chocolate bar. And so, like, they continue to just keep going through this chocolate bar rant thing, and eventually it's to all get them to get a good laugh and a good joke. And at one point they stop laughing and then they start laughing again. So as they make further and further way through this path, this trial, this road, what have you, we all of a sudden have Norman notice something in the brush, which ends up being some kids, and those kids are actually soldiers. So Norman doesn't go on and shoot them, which will lead to one of their tanks exploding and killing Parker. And so War Daddy then notices these people and runs and guns them down, and then eventually is to run to Norman and just being like, "Hey, you see, sucker, why didn't you take that shot?" And he's like, "Well, they were kids." It's like, "Well, you can see what kids can do. Look, that was your fault. That was your effing fault." And the next German and all you see with a weapon, you rake the dog out of them. And so we then go on to then have War Daddy make his way to this other base to eventually meet up with Miles, who is Scott Eastwood's character. And that will lead him to a guy named Captain Wagner. So here's, of course, where uh, Wagner goes on and complains as uh, War Daddy is to state, like, after the questioning of, like, well, hey, how many tanks am I getting? 4. Dude, I asked for 10. So we go on to have Wagner that turns to Miles as saying, like, hey, you're working with him. Like, you and your foot soldiers, your first platoon, you're working with him. So we have Wagner that goes on and explains this whole mission to War Daddy to say that it's somewhat of a rescue mission, and that it's all about, like, these certain guns being taken out. And Wagner is saying, like, well, maybe they'll surrender, maybe they'll fight, who knows, but, like, you'll just have to just see when you get there. And we have War Daddy that is asking about the high ground and curious if Wagner has eyes on it. And he's like, well, I had eyes, but they're gone now. So we have at one point the further and further that they talk, it's like, well, hey, like, I know who you are, I know what you're doing, and if anything, like, Wagner is like, why don't they just quit? Why don't they just quit what they're doing? And War Daddy turns to Wagner. It's like, would you? So we then go on to have War Daddy that is turning to the sergeants that he has with him, and he goes on to explain what the mission is. And they're at some point talking about rescuing kittens, and instead of just driving into German or Berlin, my bad. So they go on and they start driving with this first platoon, and so what goes on to happen here is we start to uh, eventually start to see that there are multiple spots here with there are anti-tanks and a bunch of other stuff that are just kind of popping out to have these guys face off against. And it seems that they're going on and doing really well. The targets are getting destroyed, and eventually this is all to go on and lead to now Norman needing to kill these bodies that are all over the ground. And Gordo turns to Norman. It's like, well, hey, you got to shoot these bodies that are all over the ground because we're not sure if they're dead or not. And Norman's like, well, maybe they are dead. And Gordo's like, well, you're not a doctor. Just shoot all of them. Just kill Germans. What you're here for. And Norman starts to lose it. He's like, I can't effing be here anymore. Like, I effing give up. I effing give up. I can't be here anymore. Like, I can't do this. And Gordo turns to Norman. It's like, well, hey, it ain't pretty, but this is what we do. So eventually, it seems after all is won here. We have Gordo that's to find some alcohol we find Bible, who's Shia LaBeouf's character, who turns to one of the people who seems to be dying, and he's going to give him his last rites, and just kind of mention some Bible work. So here is where War Daddy turns to Norman and to say, like, you know what? I had the best bow gunner in the entire Ninth Army in that seat. Now I have you. I promised my crew a long time ago I'd keep them alive. Uh, and so Norman's like, well, okay. Like, I trained to type 60 words a minute. I was not trained to gun down dead bodies. I'm trying my best here. So, as War Daddy is to poke his head out of the tank, he notices that the Americans are to have a German soldier still alive. And they're thinking about it, well, who's going to be the one to kill him? So, War Daddy used to go on and tell the guys, like, well, hey, hold up here, as War Daddy has Norman come out of the tank. So, War Daddy is to force Norman into killing this German soldier, handing him a gun, telling him to pull the trigger, or else, like he'll die if he doesn't. And so, Norman is going on and telling War Daddy here, it's like, well, kill me. Like, effing kill me. Kill me. Kill me. And so, War Daddy, of course, will not kill Norman. And so, he keeps going on and telling him to shoot this guy. And so, he does. And so, after Norman finally does do what he's supposed to do, and he falls to the ground, War Daddy does go on and just kick him in the pack, and then just saying uh, do it, Norman, do your job, and then walks away. So Norman gets dragged with the rest of the group and sits down, and so here's where the group starts to go on and tell how War Daddy actually is a little bit crazed, but he's a solid dude. That they had gone on and they'd been with him since Africa, and they wouldn't fight with anyone else. And at one point, War Daddy, it seemed in Africa, had crapped his drawers at one point. They also showed earlier where someone was actually peeing in the tank, and it was kind of interesting. So, but they go on and they say how, like, since he had crapped himself, how the tank started smelling like it, and like they all just sort of have a really good laugh about it. So War Daddy comes back to the tank and is to start to look around, and he ends up telling Norman, like, well, hey, it seems like you haven't gotten any food, so go and get some. And Grady ends up turning to Norman and saying, like, well, hey, you go on, you go eat food, and you show War Daddy that you ate food. Um, and so make sure he sees you do it. So they make their way out. They deploy. They have a bunch of tanks, and they're continuing to make their way out here. So often in the skies, they're seeing the Air Force, and they're like, oh yeah, you guys go get them. All right, cool. So they continue to make their way into this bit of town where they are to all of a sudden start to see a bunch of hung kids. And eventually, the people are trying to read that there is a sign on these kids and they can't read them, so they go on to ask War Daddy. It's like, well, hey, what does the sign say? So War Daddy says that the sign states, I'm a coward and refuse to fight for the German people. And so Gordo is like, well, hey, yeah, go ahead and let those people just kind of like tear themselves apart. Um, so, but supposedly the SS or some of the German soldiers go on to do that. So, to each their own. So, they go on and they make their way through this alley. And when War Daddy used to go on and turn to one of these German people and ask, like, well, hey, where are the German soldiers? As soon as he goes on and replies, the German man ends up getting shot down by, I believe, some sniper. So immediately War Daddy used to figure out where this sniper had gone unshot from, so he's starting to light up this building and telling Bible to follow his pattern of fire, so that way the two of them can be firing at the same location. So they end up taking down this building, and then they continue to make their way down this alley, which eventually will lead Miles to pop out from this tank, and eventually he will get gunned down while doing so, so he dies here. So the further and further they go into here, eventually there is to be this clothing building. And eventually they take out this clothing building, and a number of German soldiers are to pop their way out, and they are to be burning. And everybody's going on and laughing, like, oh yeah, let them cook. They're cooking. And Norman ends up starting to gun them down. And War Daddy's like, hey, Norman, good. Like, just keep stacking them up. And Gordon turns to Norman and says, like, hey, you should just let them burn. So there seems to be finally a German representative that is to be waving the white flag and saying, like, hey, a lot of our Germans are going on and they're surrendering. And so eventually, as some of the Germans start to fall out here, War Daddy notices one of the SS men and is like, hey, is that the guy that went on and was hanging kids? And the guy with the white flag was like, yes. So War Daddy goes on, it's like, hey, that SS soldier, shoot him, kill him. He was the guy that was killing those kids. So they kill him, and it would have been interesting if War Daddy would be like, hey, Norman, do this again. But he didn't this time around. So after this, we start to have the guys start to find these German women and get loose with them, start to make out with them, or do whatever they want with them. So, because these people are probably going to die soon, so they might as well just get one last thrill out of this, right? So, we have War Daddy that meets up with Wagner, and Wagner goes on and tells him, like, hey man, how about you get some R&R, and like the war will still be here in the morning. So War Daddy finds Norman and is seeing that he's reading a book, and so it's like, well, hey, like you just killed a number of guys, right? Like that was nothing, right? That was nothing. And Norman is like, well, yeah, like even now, like I've killed all these men, like I think I'm starting to like it. And so War Daddy brings Norman into this room where there had been a number of people that realized that, like, these guys, these Americans were coming, so they all decided to sacrifice themselves and murder themselves. And we have Norman that is asking Clear, it's like, well, why, like, did you bring me into this room? Why are you showing me this? And Daddy tells Norman, it's like, well, hey, like, ideals are peaceful, history is violent. So Daddy tells Norman, it's like, do what I tell you, and if you do that, you probably make it through this thing. So both Norman and Daddy notice a woman poking her head out of this window through this curtain. So they investigate it. So there's going to be two women here. One of them are going to be called Emma, and one of them to me is just going to be called Cousin, because I don't know who this person's name was. So, and that'll be the first person that we get introduced here within this room. So, Daddy and Norman make their way to Cousin, and they go on to ask her if she's alone, which she ends up lying and saying that she is alone. They continue to investigate the entire place. They find another woman underneath this bed, which ends up being Emma, which eventually she'll introduce herself. So we have Daddy that tells Cousin, like, well, hey, why did you go on and tell me that, like, you were alone when you weren't? Like, you could have gotten your cousin killed. And the woman ends up saying, it's like, well, I was scared and this and that. So Daddy's like, okay, fine, just sit down. So we have at one point where Daddy is to ask for hot water in this bowl, and Daddy ends up asking the woman that is going to be called at some point Emma soon, as he asks her for her name, and she gives it. So Daddy ends up opening up this metal box that ends up having a number of eggs, and then also Daddy gives Emma these cigarettes. So kind of doing a negotiation here, a bargain to be like, well, hey, like, if you like these eggs, if you want this meal, I will also give you these cigarettes. If you make this meal, like, then yeah, like, here's a trade here. So on the outside, we have a number of men who are all playing with this piano, and then they decide to throw a grenade in the piano and they have everybody run away stupidly. So we go on, I believe, to have um, either Gordo or uh, Grady, who is going on and making out with a woman, and Bible ends up and saying, like, well, I hope you get scabies. So Daddy is going on and taking off his shirt, and we see throughout his back there's a number of scars there. But he wants to go on and he wants to clean himself up, and then he also wants to shave himself. So while that's going on, we have Norman who's playing this piano, and we have Emma that is to sing along with the tune. So while that is happening, we have Daddy that turns to Norman and say, like, well, hey, if you don't take her into the bedroom, I will. So so as Norman and Emma go into the other room, and the cousin is to try to cut them off, Daddy is to grab the cousin and be like, well, hey, like, let them be young, let them be alive. So we have Norman that is with Emma in the other room, and he starts reading her palm because from his grandmother, he has to somehow be a fortune teller of a hand and what have you. So reading Emma's hand, he realizes that she seems to be kind and she likes to help people, and has the ring of Solomon upon her hand, and it seems that Norman has the exact same thing on his hand. And the further and further that they start talking to one another, this all leads to them kissing and making out. So the first person we see opening up the door is Emma to leave the room, and then Norman follows. Danny tells Norman, it's like, well, hey, you don't have to say a word, don't have to tell me anything. So shortly thereafter this, they go on and they're exchanging beverages, and they're saying which one's hot, and then all of a sudden the rest of the group from the Fury tank re-enters the scene here, and they're interrupting what is to just be this nice meal, this nice home cooked meal. So we have Grady that is looking at the girls. I'm kind of curious if I'm saying John Berthol's name right in this movie. Grady, yeah, I said it right. Good for me. So Grady is going on and looking at these women. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be sleeping with this girl. Oh yeah, definitely. And it's like, well, unless Norman has already slept with her. And the more and more like Grady is kind of asking Norman, it's like, well, did you sleep with her? And so Norman isn't asking, and then Grady isn't gonna continue to, I guess, assume it's like, well, I guess he's not saying, I guess Daddy's not saying anything. So at one point, Grady even gets to the point of choking uh, just Norman here because he won't answer him. So, but they go on and they continue to just start sitting at this table. So Daddy starts saying like, well, hey, uh, that's that's Emma's egg. Hand that to her, and we then go on to have Grady that is to lick the girl's egg, and she starts to cry, who of course is Emma, and Daddy switches eggs with Emma, and so Godo starts to go into this story because he asks Norman about like, well, hey, you a horse person? So I think Daddy is a horse person, so I'll say the story. So Godo goes on and starts talking about the story about the last battle that they had, where within the battlefield there were so many dead men and there were so many dead horses that like there was so much of a horrid smell within that battlefield. And Daddy ends up turning to the men. It's like, you know what? Like, I know what you guys are doing, but like, you're not gonna let this ruin like my one like home cooked meal, my one thing that I've wanted for I don't know how long. Like, you're not gonna ruin this. So eventually they're going on and asking like, well, why are you playing house with these German girls when you know like really what we're here to do? Like, you're just playing like pretend, you're just kind of escaping. Like, why are you doing all this? So eventually that really does get Daddy to get upset, and then he bangs the table with his fist, and then he spits at Grady. I'm sure, like, would it be the lefting, the leftovers of whatever's to be uh, Daddy's eggs back at the guy who licked him. So eventually, Norman is to talk to Emma as they need to go on and leave here, and Norman is saying to, well, hey, like, maybe we'll write to one another one day or something like that. And Grady's like, well, yeah, maybe you two will get married. Uh, so Daddy goes on and meets up with um, Wagoner, and the way in which they have to pronounce this is the way in which that I can remember it. So I keep having to, like, Captain Wagoner. I have to pronounce it that way so I can just remember the name. I know people can go on, like, just call it Wagner. Like, it's just the way I can remember the name, because otherwise I'm gonna forget it. I know I will. So they go on and they have Wagoner who is to go on and state this mission that the guys are going to go on and do next, which will lead them to this crossroad. And Wardaddy is going on and asking Wagner about the intel of the spot, and Wagner's like, yeah, about that. Like, you're really going to go on and fly blind there, because at one point we sent people out there, and like it ended up scaring a colonel and like anybody who had went there. Like, yeah, like you're flying blind. You're going into there without really knowing what you're getting into. So, but they need to go on and they need to like secure this crossroads. So as we have our characters make their way back into these tanks to get ready for their next push, all of a sudden there ends up being a number of weaponry that is getting fired from seemingly somewhere. And as the people are to brace themselves, and like even Norman is to hide underneath the tank, as soon as he's to go on and make his way from out of the tank, he realizes what had happened. That the building that Emily had been in is now in rubble, is now in ruin, and Norman somehow is to be able to find Emma's body, and he is to try and like revive her or try to help her. And Grady is to rip Norman from this woman because he's like, well, hey man, like you aren't Jesus Christ, you can't bring her back. Like there's nothing you can do. So she's dead. So let's go. So, but also telling him it's like, well, hey, this is war. You feel it? Anyways, so they get their way back into the tanks and they start to drive off. So here is where War Daddy is to go on and tell Norman about how he had started this war killing Germans in Africa. And now he's going on and from France, then Belgium, to now killing Germans in Germany. And it will end. But before it does, a lot more people have to die because of it. So here is where there seems to be going on and being yet another war that is start to happen here, where uh, the people are to start to die here. So, and that means tanks are starting to get chopped off here. As one tank seems to be taken down, and or yeah, I think there's one tank that seems to be taken down here. Peterson ends up getting killed. Davies ends up getting killed. These were two sergeants that are all uh, to be point men of these tanks, and eventually this is to lead uh, to having a tank to tank battle, which will eventually lead to having War Daddy needing to tell Bible like, well, hey, shoot him in the butt, shoot him in the rear end, shoot him in the rear end where it has the least amount of armor and it's the weakest. And we have Bible who's telling War Daddy, it's like, well, I know where to hit, and so they try to hit it at the rear end, but at some point, like they miss, and it's like, well, hey, how did you miss that? And Bible is telling War Daddy, it's like, well, hey, we're moving too fast. Uh, like it's not that easy. So here's where War Daddy tells Bible, like, well, hey, I'll call the shot. And so they go on and they're getting into position. They shoot the tank and it works perfectly. So they go on and they're trying to get the radio working and it's not working. So like, well, like the radio's dead, so we're on our own now. So now they're going to this crossroads with only one tank. All these other tanks have been obliterated here. So here is where we get to them talking, and they're talking about how like God has really rolled the dice on them, and how they're just kind of praising Norman, and how that they're saying that this is the best job that they've ever had, and they're all kind of chiming in, saying that this is the best job that they've ever had. And so Warnette is going on and telling them, it's like, well, hey, we need to head out to those crossroads, and there's going to be a wave, and we're going to have to break that wave. So they go on and they make their way to this crossroads. And by the time that they end up making to this crossroads, there is an accidental moment where this tank ends up landing on this mine and costing them basically their tank. So we have War Daddy that is going on and asking uh, Bernthal's character, John Bernthal's character, Grady, if he can fix the tank. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, we could probably figure out a way to fix it. So they're going on and they're trying to figure out a way to fix this. And so War Daddy is telling both Grady and Norman to go into the building to just kind of look around. And so Grady is telling Norman, it's like, well, hey, man, like, you know, I want to, I want to tell you that you're a good man and that I'm sorry. And like, I want to tell you all this because, like, if anything, I don't think we're good men, but I think you're a good man. So, like, eventually, like, after they go on, they have this, like, little heart to heart. They make their way back out there. And so War Daddy tells Norman that he needs to go on and he needs to kind of be a scout. He needs to be a spotter. So he throws him a bit of a box of food, Norman gets it, and so War Daddy tells him like, "Well, hey man, go out there, just kind of see what you can see." So Norman ends up asking if he can take his canteen, and War Daddy's like, "Well, of course, go ahead and take your canteen." So Norman goes out there. So he's going on and he's eating his food, and so he's running back to the men because there is a huge battalion of 200 to 300 men. There's trucks and there's everything. So Norman rushes back to them and tells them what he had seen, and so eventually what ends up happening is War Daddy is to go on and not want to leave the tank behind. He calls it home. And they're thinking like, wait a minute, like so like is your plan to be by yourself and just kind of hold off this whole battalion? Like, are you crazy? Like, so eventually they're to go on and just like while everybody's just kind of bickering, Bible goes on and like, well, hey, stop. Like, what are you doing? Like, what's your plan? Like, why are you doing this? And War Daddy is telling guys like, well, hey, just get out of here. Like, get to that tree line. Take care of yourselves. So realizing that War Daddy is willing to just sacrifice himself here and just say like, hey man, it's all right. Just do what you got to do. And Norman is the first one to go on and say that it's like, no, I'm not leaving. I'm just gonna stay here with you. And so War Daddy looks at Norman. It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna need you to load. So the more and more that like War Daddy's like, well, hey, you guys just kind of whatever, just go along. Everybody just gets back onto the tank and like, well, hey, what's your plan? And so the plan is that they're gonna go on and pretend or make look like it's pretend that whoever is in the tank is all but dead. That they're kind of putting dead bodies and chucking them on this tank and lighting them on fire, and making it look like there had been just a war zone here and everything is all but done for. So the guys are getting into the tank and they're training grenades and they're training ammunition and they're getting everything ready for what they have to do. So they're going on and they're lighting cigarettes and they're passing around alcohol and eventually we go on to have Bible who is to uh, bring up this verse that he had heard at one point. Then I hear the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, here I am, send me, send me. And so eventually, it seems that War Daddy is to know this verse from the book of Elijah, chapter 6. And Bible is like, wow, like, you know the Bible? All right. Like, so, bit of a shocker there, a bit of a surprise there. So, as Norman is to be, uh, is to be taking a bit of the alcohol and drinking it, they finally at a point are like really just being like, man, like Norman, like you are a fighting effing drinking machine, aren't you? So eventually, here's where they go and they figure out that Norman's name is Machine, and they dub him that, and or they christen him that. So here's where they go on and they again go with like the best job I ever had. the best effing job. So here's where the battalion starts to trickle in, and we have War Daddy that's going and say like, well, hey, like, don't make a move until I say so. So the men start to further and further make their way uh, up until they end up opening one of the tank containers, and the guys end up starting to fire. So the battalion starts to scatter. So eventually, what ends up happening here is that the battalion starts going into the building, and eventually the Fury tank starts to focus on that building and uh, starts to really patter into it and really blow it up. And so eventually, how things end up transpiring uh, within here is like they eventually waste all of their ammo in this tank to where at some points they have to jump out of the tank to get to the guns that are on the tank, and also to grab more of the ammo that's on the tank to get back into the tank. So because eventually they'll start to thin out. So eventually what ends up happening during this battle is at one point they end up having like rocket launchers and stuff like that, and one of the rockets ends up going through the tank and goes through uh, Grady's character, and he dies, and then Bible's holding Grady. And at one point, Gordo is to go on, and he is to have these grenades, and he's to try to chuck them, I believe. And he ends up kind of getting riddled with bullets, and he falls back into the tank. But then they realize, like, oh my god, one of the grenades are live. So Gordo grabs the grenade, he falls on it, and he ends up getting killed. And then we have Bible. Bible at one point, while War Daddy is going on, and he's shooting outside of the tank with one of the guns, Bible is to try to go on and hand War Daddy, I think, uh, these grenades or this ammo. I think it's grenades. And as soon as he goes on and hands him that, a sniper ends up taking Bible out and shooting him in the head and killing him. So we now have War Daddy, we now have Norman, and so the sniper starts to shoot War Daddy, and then that forces War Daddy back into the tank. So now that I've gone on and kind of stated all of that, and I've kind of covered all that, and really, there's a lot of other things that I probably should have talked about here that I'm not going to. I'm probably just going to rush to the end here to kind of wrap this up. Um, but there's a lot of going on here that I've completely either forgotten about or didn't want to bother to talk about. So you're losing out if you haven't gone on and seen Fury and if you haven't seen this entire film. But I just really wanted to, like, how quickly can I wrap this up so I can get this uploaded and whatever. That's my goal here for today. So also, so eventually Norman and War Daddy, like, they eventually lose all of the ammo. They empty everything out, and all that they have left is just whatever handguns that they have. Even at one point, Bible is like scrambling outside of the tank to run and find dead Germans to get certain weapons so he can just keep on keeping on here. And Norman at some point helps Bible um while like they're so yeah, like there's a whole lot of stuff that I'm going on and probably missing here, that it's really interesting, this kind of last big battle. But all of this finishes up with War Daddy going on and telling Norman here, or Machine, that he's sorry because they might die here. And so we have Norman that is stating, like, well, hey, I really want to go on and I really want to surrender here. And Daddy tells Norman, it's like, don't surrender. Like, if anything, they're going to hurt you bad, and then they're going to kill you bad. So don't surrender. It's not worth it. So as the Germans open the tank and Daddy starts to shoot at them, they end up throwing in some like I want to say that it looks like flares to me, but I guess it's like I guess it's like grenades. And Daddy is to have gone on and told Norman about this hatch that is to lead um, to being underneath the tank for Norman to hide. And so Norman takes that hatch, gets underneath the tank, and then tries to put dirt all over his body to then hide. And the tank explodes, and so the Germans are kind of surrounding around this tank, and one person ends up noticing Norman underneath the tank, and so Norman ends up raising up his hands, thinking he's going to surrender, and the soldier ends up just kind of walking away. And then so some time has passed. Norman is to go on, and it's daybreak, and Norman is to get back into the tank, is to find War Daddy's body, is to put kind of a jacket over War Daddy's head because he's dead now. Everyone's dead. And all of a sudden, Norman is to hear sounds of the clicking, clattering of possibly soldiers outside the tank. So Norman Machine is to grab this gun, and what he ends up seeing next is American soldiers, and they're like, "Hey, easy boy, easy, easy." So Machine is to be pulled out of the tank, and the soldiers are going on and they're telling Norman, "Hey man, you're a hero. Do you know that? You're a hero." And Norman says absolutely nothing. Like, I think he is just so in shock. He is just so like, huh? And Norman goes on to make his way into this ambulance, and they drive away, and he's just looking at the tank further and further away from him. And that's how this movie just wraps up. So with that said, I'm gonna get the heck out of here so I can put this video out. Yay. Because I was like, man, like, is this gonna be another like 2 hour movie that I talk for 2.5 hours or something, or it's a very long-winded thing? That's why I was trying to like race to the finish line to get this all done. And then also, there were certain aspects of this movie where I didn't quite remember who all died at certain aspects of it. So it's just kind of like, ugh, like, I don't know what to say here at certain moments, because I was like, I don't know who exactly dies in certain parts of this movie. So I didn't want to guess and maybe be wrong. So I just kind of kept going along until like I was to kind of figure out how to thin the herd, as far as like who is the last tank left. So yeah, with that said, I'm gonna just get out of here so I can just say that I somehow talked about this film in the best way that I could. So with that said, I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Thanks for you going on and listening to this, or in this case, watching this. Uh, for whatever reason, if you watch this entire thing or just watched at a certain point, I do appreciate it. Hopefully, I will go on and probably do Dwayne the Rock Johnson's Doom, which will probably be a future review because I'm thinking that that somehow is going to do miraculously well, even though it probably won't. But I feel that there is probably enough Doom video games that end up justify that movie at some point being interesting to some people. Also, I hope to still go on and do a number of things that I've already said through a number of reviews. Um, but if anything, the Dwayne the Rock Johnson Doom movie is the newest one. There have been some times where I've been kind of kicking around reviewing movies like Campfire Tales, which I don't think is all that good. But maybe it'll get views. Maybe it'll be interesting. I'm also going on and kind of kicking around doing a movie called Full Eclipse, which is kind of weaponizing werewolf movie that may look very, very cheaply done or whatever, but I don't know. Like I'm just going on and just kind of kicking around whatever weird, goofy movies are still out there that I still have to go on and get through a list of movies and just kind of cross things out finally. Um, so I hopefully will go on and be able to accomplish that and continue to do videos every day for however long as I can do that, unless equipment fails or problems happen. I'm going to be here, hopefully every day, unless I get so exhausted or tired or just need a freaking day off, which will probably be fairly soon. So with that said, bye everybody. Bye everybody.